Jorge Martin now knows what Fabio Quartararo and I already knew, which is no one is winning a world championship on that Aprilia anytime soon. Oh, we are back on the Horsepower Rodeo Monday Morning MotoGP podcast. Sorry for the long break. Had a little technical problems, had a little personal problems. We don't want to get into it. You don't care anyway. We're back talking about motorcycles, and we have a lot to cover on today's show. We have Jorge Martin, as I teased in the Aprilia. We have Moto2 action. We've got the age, oh, MotoGP is boring thing to discuss. We have Toprak Razgatlioglu, and let's just get into all of it. All right. So first of all, the Jorge Martin thing. Yes. Is that an inflammatory opening? 100%. Is it meant to make you angry and click on this podcast? Yes, it is. Is it true? Absolutely true. Now, there's been a lot of drama since I have been away, and one of the main stories that came out was Jorge Martin looking for the exit over at Aprilia, which is crazy because he's yet to even finish a Sunday Grand Prix this season. Injured in pre-season testing, injured on that Aprilia, then injured on a supermoto accident, and then comes back and immediately goes right back to the hospital after the crash in Qatar. And a lot of people are saying, well, Jorge hasn't even had a chance to be on the bike yet. Why is he looking for the exit so quickly? Yes, Jorge Martin has had a chance to ride the bike. It tried to kill him. It gave him a vicious high side, like we used to see with Marc Marquez and Honda, that bike just spinning you over the top. That's what Aprilia did to Jorge Martin. The second he gets back on the bike, he wasn't even pushing in Qatar. He's riding around in the back of the pack, just trying to get his feet wet again, just trying to get his bearings. And he can't keep the bike upright, gets tagged by Fabio Di Giannantonio, ends up in the hospital, a bunch of broken ribs. Not a good time for Jorge. So yeah, he has ridden that bike. Now, he hasn't ridden it as much as you would hope to get him up to speed and get him fast, but it doesn't take much to look around and look at where Aprilia is at. Nowhere. And I'm confidently saying this, and you can come at me and be like, well, Bez just won a Grand Prix at Silverstone. Well, he won a Grand Prix because Fabio Quartararo, who was 2.5 seconds ahead of him, his bike gave it the goods, or gave up the goods. I'm not sure the phrasing there, but you know what I mean. He was not winning that race without Fabio Quartararo having that catastrophic failure of his ride height device on the Yamaha, which is kind of a unicorn when you think about it. Like, Yamaha does not have reliability problems, kind of a freak accident. So yes, Bez wins that race. But you can't win a championship by winning a race. You have to be consistent. You have to be near the front. You have to be going through Q2, no question, every single week. The Aprilia doesn't do that. The Aprilia is good at 3 tracks, right? I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. The Aprilia goes at Silverstone, maybe Assen, and Barcelona. That's it. That's the 3 tracks you can be competitive at. And the rest of the time, you're starting at the back of the grid. You're starting, in the first 2 rows once every few races. That's not going to win a championship. And Jorge Martin did not go over to Aprilia to win a few races and just be happy to be there. He's not that hardworking, I'm going to build this from the ground up, Aleix Espargaro type. Aleix Espargaro did build that program from the ground up. He got there when it was nothing, and he helped them get to a point. And now it was passing the baton on to Jorge, and it's time to win a world championship. It ain't happening. If you remember last year when Fabio Quartararo signed the contract with Yamaha, all I heard online from everyone in the ether was, oh, Fabio Quartararo should just sign a contract with Aprilia and win a world title already. Well, first of all, it's not that easy. Second of all, I don't think Aprilia have ever put a bike on the grid that can win a world championship. Never. It's not happening, y'all. Everyone looked at Fabio and said, oh, he took the money from Yamaha. He didn't want to really fight for the world title. Well, that Yamaha's getting pole positions. And before you come at me for the Sunday, DNFs and not finishes, points this year for Fabio Quartararo don't mean anything. He's not fighting for a title. He's looking to the future. He's getting that bike revved up for future rounds, future championships. Getting on pole is a good sign. Being in Q2 every single week is a good sign. It's not something we can say for the Aprilia. Jorge Martin has seen it. He's seen what he can do on the Aprilia in a short time. He's seen what Bez can do. Bez is an immensely talented rider, a MotoGP winner before he got there. He's seen what Ayagura, who, while impressive, isn't consistent. He's a rookie. He's new on that bike. Ralph Fernandez, who's now ridden the Aprilia for what, 3-4 years, still can't get on terms with that bike. He was fighting for a Moto2 World Championship. So, like, when are we going to start looking at Aprilia and calling them what they are? Mid-pack, at best. They do not have a competitive motorcycle to fight at the front week in and week out, no matter who is riding it. Maybe if Marc Marquez was riding it. But I still don't think so. I think Marc Marquez goes over to Aprilia and that bike starts spitting him off the top like it did to Jorge Martin. They both have a very aggressive riding style, and that bike just doesn't seem to want to fit. So why is Jorge Martin looking for the door now? Because for a rider, Marc Marquez said this in his whole leave Honda for Gresini and then Ducati and all that business, riders have a very limited window when they can win a world title. And he's looking at the landscape, and he's looking at Honda winning a race this year. He's looking at Fabio Quartararo leading a race, and again, 3 pole positions in a row. He's looking at those things, and then he's looking where the other Aprilia riders are, and they are nowhere. Even on the Yamaha, Mir's been pretty fast in practice. The results, again, haven't panned out. Zarco has won a race and been consistently fast every single week. So there's a bike that at least 2 riders can ride. You look over at Yamaha. Jack Miller's doing a great job on the Yamaha. Fabio Quartararo's doing a great job on the Yamaha. There's a bike people can ride. Then you look at Aprilia. And their shining star until Bez's win at Silverstone was a rookie. Congrats to the old number 79. I love the guy. I think he's immensely talented. But there's no way in hell the top Aprilia in the championship should be a rookie. It means that bike doesn't have the potential that everyone thinks it does. And Jorge Martin has seen it, seen enough, and he's looking over at Honda going, hey, yeah, Honda last year were nowhere. Now they're somewhere. Next year, could they be somewhere else? I could go over there and get used to the Honda in the 2026 season. It's a gimme season. I don't have to perform. I don't have to produce. And then when the new regulations start in 2027, hopefully Honda have brought something to the party that is moving in that trajectory that they already are. We've seen the improvement from both of the Japanese manufacturers. And I think Jorge is looking at the tea leaves going, Aprilia seems stagnant. They seem like this is the ceiling. Again, they're a small company. This isn't bagging on them as they're not doing a good job. They have limited resources. They're the smallest company out there. So he's looking going, where can I be in the next 2-3 years to win a championship? It's not Aprilia. It's probably Honda. It's probably Yamaha. And right now, Ducati is the only bike on the grid that can win a championship. And that won't be like that forever. I mean, we're already seeing the 2025 Ducati kind of hit a wall compared to the 2024. And then we have new regulations coming in. We have a new tire manufacturer coming in. And if you don't think that is going to really throw a lot of riders for a loop, you're absolutely wrong. So yeah, Jorge, I don't blame him. He's exercising a clause that Aprilia knew was in his contract. We'll see what happens in the long, prolonged legal battle. We'll see if Jorge can even get back on that Aprilia this year, or if it's just already over before it really even took off the ground. Now, elsewhere in MotoGP land, we had the closest finished in Moto2 of all time. The win for Dennis Anjou over Diogo Moreira, 0.003 seconds was the race win. Those guys were like locked elbows crossing the finish line. It was that close. And I will say that Moto2, the last couple of seasons, has really come to play. Moto3 is always just banging handlebars and just crazy young kids throwing really light motorcycles around. It's always insane. MotoGP, people, oh, it's so boring. We'll get to that. MotoGP is the grown-up motorcycles. There's action. Some races are great. Some races are not so exciting. We're all over the place there. With Moto2, I kind of always thought the class was pretty lackluster. You know, it just really didn't do anything for me. Last year when they introduced the Pirelli tires, it threw everyone for a loop. We saw people on the Bosco chassis get more accustomed to it faster than people on Calyx. We saw riders that were more experienced show their experience, and riders that were a little younger and weren't really up to speed, just plummeted down the line. And it was just up and down all season long. And I think that's been continued into this year because we've had the championship is so wide open. Like, you would expect maybe someone like Jake Dixon or Aaron Canet to kind of run away with it. They can't seem to break free of the pack. And then you have people like Dennis Anjou and Diogo Moreira fighting for their first ever Moto2 win, and it being the closest finished in Moto2 history. It was an incredible race from start to finish, and the mid-pack battles in that race were amazing. The battles for third, fourth, and fifth. And we had Marcus Ramirez and Joe Roberts and Tony Arbolino, I believe, fighting for like fifth, sixth, seventh all frickin' race. And they were going back and forth, back and forth. We had Manu Gonzalez trying to work his way toward the front to preserve his championship run. Like, there was so much going on in that Moto2 race, they could barely even cover it. And so that is just kind of a segue for me to, jump back in and talk about the criticism that MotoGP is boring and the Aero era of MotoGP isn't worth watching and blah, 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 blah. And everyone loves to forget that this is how motorsports works. Some races, the heavens come together and give us a wild weekend, like in France, like at Le Mans, where Johan Zarco wins a wet race where everyone has to do long lap penalties and people are coming in and it is just utter chaos. And sometimes we get those races, and sometimes we get the race like last year in Austin, where Maverick Vinales kind of was out of place on the grid, back of the pack, and then comes storming through because his race pace was like nobody else's. And sometimes races are more tactical. They're more strategy. It's who's pushing, who's not pushing, who's preserving their tire. And you have to know a little bit about the sport to appreciate it. So when people are watching and they're tuning in and saying, well, this race is boring, the Aero era, there's no overtaking. There was a lot of overtaking yesterday. You had to know where to look. We had great battles in the middle of the pack. We had a pretty decent battle at the front. Yes, Marc ran away with it, but Marc's brother, Alex, kept him honest for a good chunk of that race until Marc's strategy kind of came into play. He was trying not to burn up that tire early, and then he just put the hammer down and let Alex know who was boss. It was clearly him. Everyone kind of knew it. And if you really know what you're looking for, that race was fantastic this weekend. We had mid-pack battles, we had crashes, we had Pedro Acosta fighting, we had new people in the top five, we had Franco Morbidelli and Fermin Aldeguer going at each other's throats all the way to the end. There was great things to watch in that race. And after coming off a race like Silverstone, which was wild, Bez coming all the way through the pack, Fabio Quartararo leading the race, getting pole position, just that story alone, Fabio Quartararo being nowhere to 3 poles in a row. If you still think MotoGP is boring, what are you, tuning in like halfway through Sunday and you're like sleeping? You're not paying attention. That's your fault. I'm sorry. But if you watch practice, if you watch qualifying, and if you watch the race and you take that story and you put it together, it's a freaking good story. Every single week this year has been pretty great when it comes to the stories. You have Marc and Alex, the brothers, on the podium. You have Marc's ascension back to the top. You have Pecco's struggles. You have KTM's bankruptcy, financial woes. You have Jorge Martin's injuries. You have Fabio Quartararo and Johan Zarco being the shining light for Japanese manufacturers. If none of that gets you out of your seat and gets you excited to watch MotoGP on a Sunday, you're the problem, not the sport. Maybe, just maybe, you don't know anything about the sport to enjoy it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I watch sports with people all the time, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, and they watch the sport and they know nothing about it. They're cheering because the other people are cheering. They don't know what a penalty is. They don't know what penalties mean. Like, oh my gosh, that was a hold. That's not a hold. I'm sorry. You're an idiot. Oh, that's a bet. It's got to be a penalty. No, stop. You don't know anything about the sport you're watching. Educate yourself, then come back and you'll be able to appreciate it. Take a bike out on a track, ride around a track on a motorcycle, understand what these guys are going through, then come back and watch the sport. And it's not boring. It won't be boring to you ever, ever again. And so I will say this, I've said this so many times on the podcast, if you watch MotoGP, and let's say it's the most boring race you've ever seen, where there's no overtaking and everyone's just in a line and they're all a second apart and they're just riding. If you can't take something from that race that is interesting or is entertaining, that's you. That's you telling on yourself. You don't know enough about the sport to make it interesting for yourself. You don't understand the storylines. You don't understand the human side of things. You don't understand the machinery side of things. You just don't get it. That's not MotoGP's problem. Now, that is not saying that there aren't ways to make the sport better. And they are trying. The regulations, that's what the regulation change is meant to do. That's what the tire change is meant to do. Changing from Michelin to Pirelli isn't that Michelin sucks, Pirelli good. It's, we have got accustomed to this tire. Everyone's built a bike around this tire. So let's throw them a curveball and see who can adapt, see who comes to the front. We saw this current Michelin tire end the career of Andre Dovizioso. Andrea was one of the top competitors in MotoGP, fighting Marc Marquez for titles every single year. This new Michelin tire came out, and it was so grippy, it was pushing the front on his motorcycle, and he just couldn't figure it out. He couldn't handle it. And he went from a front runner to a back-of-the-pack rider overnight because of the tire change. And that wasn't even changing manufacturers. That was just a new version of the Michelin tire. So now we're going to go to Pirelli, and everything is going to change. The riders are going to have to get used to it. The engineers are going to have to get used to it. It's a curveball meant to make the sport more exciting. Will it work? We don't know. No one knows. Will there be unintended consequences? Will there be one rider who just is so much better at it than everyone else and it makes the sport boring? Possibly. Are they making the aero smaller? Yes, so quit complaining. The aero. They're making it smaller. Shut up. They're making the CCs smaller. They're doing all these things, not just to do it. They're doing it to try to make the sport more exciting. But again, if you can't find excitement in a race weekend, maybe you're not watching it right. If you're just tuning in for Sunday and that's it, you're just watching MotoGP, you're not watching the practice sessions, or you're not watching qualifying, I can understand why you say it's boring. You're not paying attention. If you're not watching Moto3 and Moto2 and MotoGP on a Sunday, you're telling me between those three races, you can't find it worthwhile to be on your couch. And by the way, those races are only 45 minutes each. In the time it takes you to watch one soccer game, NFL game, baseball game, you can watch all three of the races on a MotoGP weekend. And you're telling me you can't find anything that gets your blood going? Man, get out of here. Stop. All right, enough on that. I've harped on that so much. I'm going to talk about this all the time because it really gets my goat when we see it online. MotoGP is boring. Oh, good thing we have Moto2. MotoGP sucks. Telling on yourselves. All right, I want to talk a little bit about another big headline that's coming into the MotoGP world this year, which is Toprak Razgatlioglu back in the news yet again on the motorsport side. Obviously, he won the World Superbike title with BMW and all those concessions last year. Did a great job. He's a phenomenal rider. And I have been accused of being a Toprak hater, which is not true. It's just not true. Where the Toprak candle lighters, he can do no wrong, people get me, is when they say things like, oh, Toprak should just go to MotoGP, he would dominate. I'm going to say this really clearly. No, he will not. Toprak will not come to MotoGP and take over. It's not going to happen. Would that be fun and interesting for it to happen? Would I like to be wrong here? Absolutely, I would love to be wrong. It's not going to happen. No one does that. Now, the news is that Toprak is coming into MotoGP next year, maybe riding for Pramac Yamaha. He already has a relationship with Yamaha. He's test-rided the Yamaha in the past. Didn't go great, but they decided maybe they've made a big enough step for him to come back and give it another shot. Do I think he can be successful in MotoGP? Absolutely. Why not? If he can adjust to the MotoGP bike, the rigidity of the chassis, they're going to Pirelli tires, which he's used to in World Superbike. I think it makes all the sense in the world for him to make the jump next year. And a lot of people are saying, well, wait, why would he make the jump in 2026 when all the regulations are changing for 2027? Here's why. And it is the same reason why Marc Marquez decided to take that little tiny contract with Gresini Racing, is because Toprak, like Marc, wants that gimme year. The year in 2026 where no one is going to expect him to win races, to fight for a title, to get into Q2, nothing. Because it's his first year there, it's a new manufacturer, it's a new category, it's a new everything, and he wants to get his feet wet. And he won't have the expectations on him of a factory rider. Well, you need to compete at the front, you need to be beating your teammate, all these things, because everyone's going to be saying, well, the regulations are changing completely next year anyway, and it's really all the manufacturers next season. As much as they'll be fighting for a championship, they'll be looking forward to 2027 and beyond. That's where the money will be going. And so basically next season for Toprak will be a really long test. It'll be a massively long off season on a MotoGP bike to get used to the category. Because as much as these bikes are changing in 2027, they're not changing. It's 150cc displacement, a little bit of a shorter aero, new fuel, new tire. Like, it's not changing all that much. And so he's going to use 2026, if this actually goes through, as basically a way to test the Yamaha, to get comfortable, so that going into winter testing on the eve of the 2027 season, he can be comfortable, up to speed, and ready to go. And there'll be no excuses. And Yamaha will know what they have for him. They'll be expecting him to be competitive right away in 2027. And he'll know what to expect from the MotoGP category. And he'll no longer be a superbike rider trying to make that transition. The transition period will be over, and he'll have had a long one. And then we get to see if Toprak will dominate MotoGP. He won't dominate. Could he win some races? Absolutely. We'll see how he does on the bike. We'll see how good the Yamaha is. There's so many factors. We have riders in the paddock right now who've won 2 world titles who don't dominate. Pecco Bagnaia has won 2 MotoGP championships. He's not dominating. The only one dominating is Marc Marquez, and he's a once-in-a-generation rider. Can Toprak be that same kind of guy? We don't know. I know you're a fan. I love your enthusiasm, but we don't know. And we won't. It's just as simple as that. Okay, lastly, I never really like to complain about the broadcast for MotoGP. I don't like to talk about the commentators, because I actually think being a commentator live during a race is a very, very difficult job. I mean, it is hard to talk intelligently and articulately for 45 minutes straight and leave no gaps in the airtime, and have you and your partner be in sync and bouncing things back and forth and not stepping on each other too much, but getting your points in and being excited and enthusiasm, especially if the race doesn't, there's not much going on in the race as far as like overtaking or crashes or anything like that. Like, you got to make up things to say. You're constantly moving your mouth like this. It's difficult. So I never like to comment on that. And I also don't like to comment on, well, they should have shown this, they should have shown that. Like, yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda after the fact. Like, they can't see the future. They're watching the race just like us in the control room with all those cameras, and the director is trying to pick out the most interesting thing to show you at any given time. They are trying to show you the most interesting thing. And one thing they're criticized on heavily is crossing the finish line. So if it's a close race, everyone wants to focus on the close battles. Oh, we should see these 2 riders cross the finish line because they're close. Well, we have to show the winner cross the finish line, because they're the winner. Oh, it's disrespectful if you don't show the winner crossing the finish line. But a lot of times you can't show both. Like, you can show the winner crossing the finish line, but then at the same time, the battle for 3rd and 4th is going into the final corner, and that's the part we want to see too. So they can't show us everything. Here's my issue. What they don't need to show us ever, is the crowd. I don't ever want to see shots of the crowd and flags waving. I don't give a shit about the crowd. I really don't care. And on Sunday, Marc Marquez crosses the line. Further back, we have Alex Marquez, no question, he's getting 2nd. Pecco Bagnaia is getting 3rd, but there was a battle for 4th and 5th. There was a battle further back between Fermin Aldeguer and Franco Morbidelli. They've been showing us most of the last couple laps of, these 2 going back and forth. And when it comes time, we get Marc crossing the finish line, so all you Marc Marquez fans should be happy. And instead of cutting back to try to find this 4th, 5th battle crossing the finish line, showing anyone else, we're cutting to like pictures of the crowd waving red flags for Marc. Yay, they're happy. There are riders still on the track currently finishing the race, and they just literally, the broadcast forgot anyone else was riding. Marc crossed and the race was over, and they show shots of the crowd and of the marshals and of Marc doing his slowdown lap, and there's riders still finishing the race, and we have to look at the timing section of the screen to know what the hell's going on. That's just such bad broadcast etiquette, in my opinion. I know sometimes it's hard to get it right. This was not. Stop showing us people waving flags. I don't care. Good Lord. There's been so many broadcasts where someone crashes and they've cut away to audience reactions. I mean, there's a very famous Marc running off the track years and years ago when he was leading the world championship. He was pushing really hard, and they're showing all these shots, and they cut to the crowd, and the whole crowd went, whoa? And then the broadcast was like, oh, something happened. Let's cut to Marc running through the gravel. If we would have been focusing on the race to begin with, we would have seen that live. But instead, we're looking at people just sitting in chairs and standing. Why? There's no reason to show shots of the crowd during the race action. I just don't care. You want to show the cute little kids in slow-mo crying when Fabio Quartararo crashes, after the fact? fine. You want to do those human interest story things? Fine, that's great. The little guy wearing the Marc Marquez leathers that they brought in, I think it was the Japanese Grand Prix, that stuff's all great, but why are we showing the crowd during a race? Are they on the track? Am I rooting for the crowd? No. Let's focus what's going on the track. Let's show what the racers are doing. Let's show the battles. Let's show the people crossing the finish line. And then after the race is over, if you want to do 500 shots of the crowd, and we got them. We got Marc Marquez and Alex Marquez hyping up the crowd afterwards. We got it. We didn't need to see it while there were still racers on track. It's just sucks. It sucks. Well, that is going to do it for this slightly abridged version. I mean, it's my first week back, folks. Give me a break. A version of the Horsepower Radio Monday Morning MotoGP podcast. You can catch me over on YouTube. You can follow me here. We're going to be doing some more content on TikTok, getting back to the short form stuff and the long form stuff over on YouTube. So check us out, both places. And thank you so much for watching.